Hello students, after knowing the term how the equilibrium price and output to be determined, now we are interested to enter into the interesting topic that is called as the elasticities. In the previous class you already know what is the meaning of the demand and thereafter the supply and what are the component on which the demand is to be depends upon, and exactly in the same manner what are the component upon which the supply is to be depend upon. Then after knowing the term what is called as the demand, law of demand and supply, law of supply, what are the factors that are affecting the demand, and that is the extension that is expansion contraction in the demand, expansion contraction of the supply. In the same manner the shift in demand, shift in supply, and thereafter the equilibrium, and how the shift in demand, that is called the increase and decrease in demand or increase and decrease in supply, that affect the equilibrium price and quantity, we already covered in the previous class. Right, today we have to start with the term what is called as elasticity. We have to calculate the elasticity of demand as well as the supply. That means elasticity of demand we have to calculate it, exactly in the same manner elasticity of supply also we are going to be calculate. And what is the demand? Actually the quantity demand of a particular product, it is a function of its price. If you take the product of X, is a function of its price, income, taste, preferences, price of other related commodities and so on. In the same manner, quantity supply of a particular product, let us say X, it also is the depending upon the price of the product, goal of the producer, level of technology, then the price of raw material, price of other related commodities, that is price of substitute and price of complement. Now then what is elasticities? Actually elasticity, it explain us the responsiveness change in quantity demand or quantity supply. Elasticity means the responsiveness of the change in quantity demand or the quantity supply due to this determinant, okay, due to this determinant. Suppose we take into account what is the elasticity of demand, that is called the price elasticity of demand. That means how the demand is to be fluctuated due to the change in the price or the factor remains constant. Then if you say income elasticity, that means the income elasticity demand means change in quantity demanded, responsiveness change in quantity demanded due to the level of income where other factors remain constant. In the same manner, what is elasticity of supply? Elasticity of supply means responsiveness in quantity supply due to the change in price of the product, right. So that means elasticity, what it tells us, that is the change in responsiveness change in either quantity demand or quantity supply due to its determinant, that is called as the elasticities. Got it? Then after knowing the term what is elasticity, ଆମେ ପଢ଼ିବା price elasticity, income elasticity, substitution elasticity, cross elasticity and the elasticity of supply also be. Right. Let us start with one by one of it. Start with the term what is price elasticity of demand. Price elasticity of demand. As in the previous, I mean few seconds before what I tells you, explain to you, then elasticity demand due to the change in price. That means elasticity demand that equals to the percentage change in quantity demanded divided by percentage change in price. Responsiveness change in quantity demanded due to responsiveness change in price of the product, or in the other way percentage change in quantity demanded to percentage change in price of the product. Responsiveness change in quantity demand due to the change in price of the product, that is called as the price elasticity of demand. Let us say we take the demand curve to be there, let us say this side is the price, this side is the quantity. This is a given demand curve. That means initially when the price is 10, quantity demanded is to be, let us say it is 20. When price falls to rupees 5, quantity demand increases to, let us say it is 30. Let imagine it. What do you find here? Initially price of the product is 10 rupees. How many unit to be demanded? Now unit demanded is to be 20. When price falls, other factor remains constant. When price falls, quantity demand increases. When price falls from 10 to 5, demand increases from 20 to 30. That means why demand rises? The demand rises due to the fall in price of the product, right. So, this is the percentage, how many percentage change in price of the product and how many percentage change in quantity demanded. So, this is the how many unit to be fall, price falls by rupees 5 and 5 is how many percentage of 10, it is nothing but the 50 percentage, that the percentage fluctuation in the price is 50 and initially demand is 20, when price fall demand rises by 10, 10 is how many percentage of 20, again it is 50 percentage. So, the when we calculate the elastic demand, the elastic demand turns to be equals to 1. So, how the elasticity we calculate? The percentage change in quantity demanded due to the change in price of the product. We can calculate that one in another direction. This percentage change in quantity demand can be written as delta Q upon delta P. Let us say delta Q upon Q multiplied by the 100. Similarly, delta P upon P multiplied by the 100. What is delta? Now, change in quantity. And what is quantity? Q? Q is the initial quantity. And what is delta P? The change in price, and P is the initial price. When you shuffle this equation, delta Q upon delta P multiplied by the P upon Q, right. If you take into account the same example to calculate the elasticity demand with this process also be, what is change in quantity? Kete quantity change hoiche? Na quantity change hoiche 10, price kete change hoiche? Na price change hoiche 5, initial price kete? Na initial price is 10 divided by initial quantity kete? Na initial quantity is to be 20. So, what is the outcome? When you simplify these things, this is okay, numerator is 100 divided by 100, we can take into account that it is 1, or you can simplify got it and find the value, the elastic demand equals to 1. So, the elasticity demand, how it will be measured? Now, percentage change in quantity demanded divided by percentage change in price of the product. Kete percentage demand change hochi? Kahinki demand change hochi? Now, due to the kete percentage change in price of the product, provided that other factors to be remains constant. अन्य सब जिनिस स्थिर थाई, डिमांड केते चेंज होची, प्राइस चेंज होबा द्वारा आमे ताको जते कैलकुलेट करूचे, ताको जते स्टडी करूचे, दैट इज कॉल्ड एज द इलास्टिसिटी ऑफ डिमांड. ओके. नाउ Marshall actually categorized the entire elasticity into 5 different types. Okay, आमे जो रिजल्ट बाहरुची एठी बाहला केते ना इक्वल टू 1 बाहरला. ये जो either it is 1 or more than 1 or less than 1 or equal to 0 or equals to infinity, therefore he take into account, Marshall categorized the entire price elasticity into the 5 types. But prior to that, you have to remember, while you calculating the elasticity demand, by default the demand curve is downward sloping. So, आमर जेतले कैलकुलेट करिबा इलास्टिसिटी वैल्यू जहाँ बाहरिबो ताको आमे मॉडुलस भीतर रखिबा. मॉडुलस मीन्स तार एब्सोल्यूट वैल्यू नबा. जदि -1 हबा सेटा आमे तो +1 कहिबा. Then because by default demand curve is a downward sloping, the exception is that demand curve to be upward sloping curve. Therefore, always while you calculating the elasticity demand, we put the modulus sign for that. ठीक अछि. ताले आमे बर्तन आरंभ करिबा how Marshall categorized the entire elasticity demand into 5 types. 5 kinds of elasticity of demand. The first one, it is perfectly elastic, perfectly elastic. Second, perfectly inelastic. third, elastic, fourth, inelastic, and fifth, unitary elastic or elasticity. The less elastic जोटा हबा आमे ताको कहबा more elastic and जोटा हमर inelastic लेखुचे ताको आमे कहबा less elastic, right. When you take into account unitary elasticity, in this case elasticity demand equals to 1, unit means 1, and in case of your perfectly inelastic, okay, perfectly inelastic, in this case elasticity demand equals to 0. When is perfectly elastic, in this case elasticity demand equals to infinity. If it is more elastic, then elasticity demand to be greater than 1. If it is the less elastic, elasticity demand to be less than 1. So, these are the 5 different kind notations of your elasticity of demand. What Marshall categorized the entire elastic demand into 5 types: perfectly elastic, perfectly inelastic, more elastic, less elastic, and unitary elasticity of demand. Let us start with one by one. In case if you are perfectly elastic, the demand curve to be a horizontal straight line. This is the price, this is the quantity or quantity demanded. Here the price is P1. If there is slight change in price of the product, I mean the price little bit change hejibo, very negligible change in price of the product, demand changes infinitely. I mean the demand huge amount change hejibo jodi price ki little bit change hela. That means price to be remains constant, the demand to be there, the quantity demand increases from Q1, Q2, Q3 and so on, but the percentage change in price equals to 0. If the percentage change in price equals to 0 and there exists the percentage change in quantity demand, it is positive, you know, elasticity demand that equals to percentage change in quantity demanded divided by percentage change in price of the product, right. If you find the denominator part is to be 0 and numerator part is this, anything divided by 0 it runs to be infinity. So, elastic demand in this case equals to infinity. Now, in the same pattern, if you take into account perfectly inelastic, in case if you are perfectly inelastic, here we find there may be fluctuation in the price of the product, price baduthiba kamuthiba, but there is no change in the demand. You can take the example of your salt, जो लुण आम व्यवहार करुचे तार प्राइस जदि बढ़िबो किंबा कमिबो आमे एक्जेक्टली द सेम अमाउंट क्वांटिटी डिमांड करिबा, क्वांटिटी केवल बढ़िबानी किंबा कमेबा नहीं. That means their existence of the changes in the price of the product from P1 to P2 means percentage change in price is there, but percentage change in quantity turns to be 0. If the numerator is 0 divided by denominator to be any positive number, then what you find, the elasticity demand in this case equals to 0. Here is equals to infinity, this is equals to 0. This is the case of your perfectly elastic, in the case of your perfectly inelastic, right. Then after knowing the term perfectly elastic and perfectly inelastic, now we have to move to the third concept, what is called as more elastic or simply is called as elastic. In case of your elastic, the demand curve to be a flatter demand curve. That means if there is slight change in the price of the product, quantity demanded changes to the greater extent. Let for example, initially price is P1 and quantity is Q1. If the price falls little bit, आमे यदि price को अल्प कमेबा, percentage change in here the percentage change in price is this much, and you find that this is the percentage change in quantity demanded. This is the percentage change in quantity demanded. Now, what do you find? The percentage change in price, the percentage change in quantity demanded is to be greater than percentage change in price of the product. এই যে গ্যাপটা দেখুছো এই গ্যাপটারও অধিক আছে when percentage change in quantity demanded is greater than percentage change in price, in that case elastic demand should be greater than 1. যেতବେଳେ percentage change in quantity demandটা percentage change in price টারও বড় হবো সেই সময় আমি দেখিবা elastic demand greater than 1 হবো. Similarly, move to the next bit. It is the it is the less elastic or it is called the inelastic. In this case, the demand curve to be a steeper demand curve. এটি আমি দেখো যে flatter demand curve, এটি আমি দেখিবা steeper demand curve. If initially price is P1, quantity demand is to be Q1, right? When price falls to the P2, quantity demanded increases from Q1 to Q2. What do you find? এই যে গ্যাপটা এই গ্যাপটা ছোট, that means percentage change in quantity demanded is to be less than percentage change in price. যেতବେଳେ percentage change in quantity demandটা percentage change in price ଠାରୁ କମିଯିବ ସେତେବେଳେ ଆମେ କ'ଣ କହିବା ନା elastic demand to be less than 1. So in case of your elastic, the elastic demand to be greater than 1, in case of your less elastic, elastic demand to be less than 1. Here is the demand curve to be a flatter demand curve, in this case the demand curve to be a steeper demand curve. Okay? So we complete the first 4 concepts: perfectly elastic, perfectly inelastic, elastic and inelastic. Now move to the last bit, unitary elasticity. In case of your unitary elasticity, percentage change in quantity demanded exactly equals to the percentage change in price of the product. যেতବେଳେ ନ୍ୟୁମେରେଟରଟା ଡିନୋମିନେଟର ସମାନ ହେଇଯିବେ ଦେନ୍ ଆମେ କାଟିଦେବା ତାକୁ ଇକ୍ୱାଲ୍ ଟୁ 1 ହେଇଯିବ. ଫାର୍ଷ୍ଟ କେସ୍ରେ କ'ଣ ହେଲା କାହିଁକି ଏଇଟା ଇନଫିନିଟ୍ ହେଲା ନା ପରସେଣ୍ଟେଜ୍ ଚେଞ୍ଜ ଇନ୍ ପ୍ରାଇସ୍ଟା 0 ଥିଲା ସେଥିପାଇଁ ଏନିଥିଙ୍ଗ ଡିଭାଇଡେଡ୍ 0 ଟର୍ନ୍ସ ଟୁ ବି ଇନଫିନିଟି. ଆଣ୍ଡ perfectly inelastic case रे कौन देखिले ना elastic demand टा 0 हो जाउची. Why it is so? Because in that particular case demand turns to be 0, percentage change in quantity demand turns to be 0, therefore elastic demand turns to be 0. But if you take into account less elastic, or it is called the elastic and inelastic case, in case if you are more elastic, why it is greater than 1? Because the percentage change in quantity is more than that of the price, numerator is more than the denominator, therefore the net result will be greater than 1. But in the next case, inelastic or less elastic case, percentage change in quantity demand is less than the percentage change in price. That means numerator is to be less than the denominator, outcome is to be definitely less than 1, therefore it to be less than 1. But here is the case of equal to 1, that is called the unit, that is called the unitary elastic. Here the percentage change in quantity demand exactly equals to the percentage change in the price of the product. For that reason, here the demand curve to be a rectangular hyperbola. The demand curve to be a rectangular hyperbola. I mean, जितने परिमाण रे प्राइस टा चेंज हबो एक्जेक्टली सेम परिमाण रे डिमांड टा तमरा राइज करिवो. This is the P1, P2, this is the percentage change in price, this is your Q1, Q2, I mean delta Q, this is the percentage change in the quantity. And here the percentage in the quantity exactly the same thing as the percentage change in the price, therefore elastic demand turns to be equals to 1. So this is all about how Marshall categorized the inter-elasticity into 5 different types. One is called as perfectly elastic, perfectly inelastic, less elastic, more elastic and unitary elasticity. Okay. Now after that we have to move to the next concepts. What are the factors that affect or determine the elasticity demand? को factor गुड़िक elasticity demand को affect करुचंती. Then one by one we have to start with it. Determinant of elasticity of demand. There the large number of determinants are there, but we have to take into account some important component of it. Let us start with the term here availability of close substitute of the product. We take into account the first case, close substitute. आमे जो प्रोडक्ट रो प्राइस टाको चेंज करिबा से प्रोडक्ट रो प्राइस चेंज करिबा जेतला माने लेट्स फॉर एग्जांपल गुड एक्स गोटे अछि गुड वाई गोटे अछि लेट्स से कोका कोला एंड थम्स अप both are the close substitute to each other. If both have to be close substitute to each other, then in that case, jodi janakar price ta change he jauchi, let us say price ta fall kari gala, then in that case what happened to the price of the others. So that means demand to be fluctuated, percentage change in demand to be changes, the elastic demand to be there. How to calculate? Now you know the formula to procedure the calculations, but the concept is about which one to be affecting it. Now affecting me, suppose the price of petrol increases, you know what happened to the demand for the car or the vehicles. Similarly, if the price of the let us say petrol to be fall, what happened to the demand for the car and all sort of vehicles are there. Why it is so? Because both are complement to each other, because you have to run your vehicle with the help of the petrol. As the both have to be complement to each other, then the price of a particular thing is to be changes that affect the others also. So you have to take the first things close substitute. If there is existence of the close substitute of the product, then let us say Pepsi price kamigala, what about the demand for the Coca-Cola? Similarly, thumbs up price kamila, what about the demand for the 7up or something else? So we have to take, if there existence of the close substitute, if there exists the close substitute, then elasticity demand is to be greater than 1. আমি যদি ক্লোজ সাবস্টিটিউট থিবে তাহলে ইলাস্টিসিটি ডিমান্ড গ্রেটার দ্যান হবা, নো ক্লোজ সাবস্টিটিউট, in that case elastic demand less ହେଇଯିବ। ଯେତେବେଳେ elasticity demand ଯାହାର substitute product ଥିବ এই କେସ୍ରେ elastic demand greater than ହବ। ଯେତେବେଳେ जो प्रोडक्टर प्राइस फ्लक्चुएसन होची तार जदि कौन क्लोज सब्स्टिट्यूट प्रोडक्ट कहीं नथिबे ताहले इन दैट केस इलास्टिक डिमांड लेस हबो, राइट। नाउ मूव टू द सेकंड केस, नेसेसरी और लग्जरी। necessary or luxury. If it is a necessary type of product, like let us say for example, if you take the case of your toothpaste, tooth powder, let us say rice, we take into account the oil, these are the the necessary type of product. In those type of necessary type of product, elasticity demand is to be less than 1. If it is a luxury type of product or it will be let us say television set, AC, refrigerator, in those case elasticity demand to be greater than 1. If the products have, that means the products have the close substitute greater than 1, no close substitute less than 1. If the product is necessary, elastic demand will be less than 1. If the product is to be luxury type of product, then it will be greater than 1. Now after knowing the close substitute, not available of the close substitute, necessary and luxury, now move to the time horizon. You would take into account the short term and the long term, that means the availability of the demand. If you demand certain things, it may be available in the market, may not be available in the market. If it is available in the long run, what happened to the elasticity? If it is available in the short run, what happened to the elasticity? That means the time horizon. Third one is the time horizon, that is the short run or is the long run. If it is the short run, that means in case of your short run, if the demand price increases, suddenly what you find, the demand to be reduces, and in case of short period, elastic demand definitely greater than 1, because you know in short period people try to consume more in the fear of let us say in the near future maybe price to be rises furthermore. Therefore, when there is a little bit change in the price of the product, elastic demand to be more there. But in case of your long run, we know the supply is to be plenty, therefore in that case very negligible changes in the demand, demand is to be less than 1. So if they take into account the time horizon, in case of your short run, the elastic demand to be greater than 1, if you take into the long period, then in that case elastic demand to be less than 1. Then after knowing the close substitute, necessary, luxury, time horizon, then we have to take into account with what type of market is to be, whether it is a broad market or it will be narrow market. Broad market means market will be open, narrow market means it will be available only in the local case, right. If it is a broad market, what happened to the elasticity demand? If it is a narrow market, what happened to the elasticity of demand? Broad market and or it will be narrow market. So, in case of your broad market and narrow market, in broad market elasticity demand to be greater than 1, in case of your narrow market elasticity demand to be less than 1. Just reverse it, just reverse. In case of your broad market elasticity demand to be greater than less than 1, like in case of your long run, and in case of your narrow market elasticity demand to be greater than 1, because in broad market if there is little bit change in the price of the product, there is hardly you can find the demand to be changes at the faster rate. Therefore, in broad market less than 1, in narrow market there is no availability of the supply instantly. Therefore, when there is slight change in the price of the product, demand to be fluctuated more than 1. So, these are the different type of the factors which determine the elasticity of demand. So, what we cover right now? We cover the term what is the elasticity of demand. Thereafter, we also we cover how it to be measured, what are the 5 different kinds of elasticity of demand, and the later on we will also study what are the factors that determine the elasticity demand. Thank you for today. In the coming class, we start with the term what is called the how to measure the elasticity demand. Thank you.